And bibbity bobbity boo, just like that, at 6 o'clock on a Friday morning, March 22nd. This is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow up here in snowy Chippewa Falls. 4 inches of some really fluffy stuff. So please drive carefully, wherever you are, out and about on this Friday morning. Coming up, our usual stable of excellent Friday guests. We'll talk to Courier Newsroom national correspondent Keya Vakil. We'll talk about Donald Trump's takeover of the RNC, not just from a power standpoint, but financially. You want to give money to the Republican Party? You're actually giving it to Donald Trump's lawyers. In our second hour, we'll talk to Mark Jacob of the Stop the Presses newsletter. And our topic is weasel words. Why do media outlets, why do they have an allergy of calling things what they are when somebody's being racist or anti-Semitic or has ties to Russia? Dan Schumacher will talk to us about sports, and nobody has a perfect bracket once again after yesterday's games. Plus, Brittany Murillo with our forecast, Greg Bach in Waukesha, and much more coming up in about 4.5 minutes here on Up North News Radio.
some snow, and that will continue this morning, ending by early to mid-afternoon. We could get another couple of inches, maybe 3 to 4 in spots by the time it winds down. 34 today, north wind at 5 to 15 by this afternoon. Tonight, 25 tomorrow. 34 with more rain and snow in the works for next week. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Currently, it's 28.
Coming up Friday on That Air on Air, it's time to recombobulate. Dan Schumacher will join us from the recombobulation area. Don't miss it.
Your home of the Earl Ingram Show. Weekday mornings from 8 till 10 on The Shaw. 540 AM and 101.1 FM WAUK.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06 on this Friday morning, March 22nd, 2024, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, white, snowy, Christmassy day to have you here up north. If you're indoors, if you're out on the roads, it's a little less beautiful. So please be careful out there. Live from Lake Wissota, wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, through the app or social media or by podcast, it's nice to have you along on this, third or fourth day of spring, when Greg Bach is going to tell me that it looks a little different out there. And I believe Paul McCartney put it to music one time when describing the environment.
Deal with it.
The things I do for you, man. The things I do for you.
Did you hear me accidentally play before?
Yes, I did.
Darn it.
Yeah. Everybody's favorite Christmas carol. Christmas tune.
I love that song.
Except mine.
Oh, wow.
All right. How was your drive down there from Kenosha to Waukesha?
Absolutely miserable. Brittany Merlot, Civic Media's own meteorologist, Brittany Merlot, was correct. And where I'm living in Kenosha, it was a light dusting, more with rain. So it really wasn't that bad. But once I hit about the airport, it got bad. There was plows out, there was salting happening. But once I hit Waukesha, I'm not kidding you, the plows were coming down 894.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got to the Beloit exits, which led you to 43 South, and they all stopped and they went into Milwaukee up, and
Sure.
They left it all. So Waukesha, from when I got there, highway, back roads, residential roads, nothing is touched.
Get it together, Waukesha.
Let's
Let's do this.
Please, if you are listening to this and you are in the Waukesha area, drive carefully, leave the house earlier if you need to be somewhere, or if you don't, just stay home.
Yeah. Hey, start your long weekend. I mean, you got basketball to watch, right? Although for you see this, but the listeners on the radio can't. Do you know what the sound of the day is here? That's the sound of your brackets, boys and girls. That's your brackets. Yeah. 3 11s won yesterday over,
You're just
over
done.
6s. What's that?
You're just done. You're like, I'm
done. Look. No, nobody's going to have a perfect bracket again. Oh, darn. No, you got 3 11s beating 6 seeds, and you had a 14 beating Kentucky, a 3 seed. And that came from what I'm reading here. I did not watch the game, but I'm seeing that the whole reason that the 3rd seed Kentucky went down to a 14 is because of a kid from Pewaukee Lake named Jack Golke, who it now plays for Oakland University, which had this huge 80-76 upset last night over Kentucky. Golke attended Pewaukee High School. He hit 7 of 13 3-pointers in just the first half, breaking the single game record for the most 3-pointers by a Kentucky opponent in the tournament, and led Oakland to that big upset. So local kid done good. So
can we just talk about sports for a brief second? And
sure, guess what, we're here. Go for it.
The one thing about sports that blows my mind, and this is the thing about baseball that I just will never be able to get my brain around or really be that into, are not the stats of like he's hit more home runs or he's dunked more baskets. It's This guy has sunk more 3-pointers against a Kentucky team in
the tournament in the first half.
Yeah, exactly. You jumped in like you got a record, but it's a real specific record.
So much data out there now,
Yeah.
and it's easier to spit out than ever before. So you get these.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a baseball fan, but some of these baseball stats now, I couldn't possibly tell you how they're calculated. And you know who you blame for all this? Brad Pitt. Because Moneyball was such a good movie, and it was all about how the what is it, not the data, the stats, the analytics. That's it.
Yeah.
The analytics are all the thing now, and it's how you get statistics like that. But
yeah,
it gives you something to talk about.
But Moneyball still slaps. It's a great movie.
If you are taking the day off for basketball, a reminder that number 2 Marquette will be playing 15 seed Western Kentucky at 1 o'clock this afternoon. That game's in Indianapolis. And then the Badgers, in a 5-12 game, they will be playing 12 seed James Madison at 8:40 tonight in Brooklyn. So a 9:40 start Eastern time out there in New York. But that Badger game, you can hear it starting at 7:30. Coverage begins on locally grown radio in Wisconsin Rapids. News from the center in Richland Center, Lake Air and Amory, WRJN in Racine. Some of you may be doing other things. It's Friday. There's probably a comedy club or two that you could go to. Greg, maybe you know of one?
Only one, Pat.
Only one.
One comedy club to rule them all. Yes, this
What
weekend,
would that be? What is this mystical, magical club?
This weekend at the Laughing Tap, we've got Casey Shornama. And the reason why I can tell you that SNL will be a repeat or not a new episode tomorrow is because Casey Shornama is a writer on SNL.
Oh, okay.
And she will be doing 3 shows this weekend, 1 tonight and 2 tomorrow. And tickets are still available. I believe the Saturday show is nearly sold out, Saturday early. So you can come out tonight or you can come out for the late show on Saturday night. All tickets are $22 online, $25 at the door. No drink minimum. So it's a pretty affordable night of comedy to see a SNL staff member here. And then actually in a couple of weeks, we'll be having SNL performer Michael Longfellow at the club.
Really?
Who is, yeah. So we get the heavy hitters, my friend.
Yes, you do.
So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's been fun. Casey is very, very funny. She is incredibly nice. Just got a great wit about her. And I'm looking forward to having her back at the club.
That's great. So quite a lineup that you have comedy-wise. And on this snowy day, it's a good time to remind people that a different kind of lineup was announced yesterday, Summerfest. So we get again on a snowy morning. We have the big gig to look forward to as folks all over the state will make their way to Milwaukee over the summer. The A-listers include Maroon 5, Tyler Childers, let's see, Kane Brown, Motley Crue, Keith Urban, and more. Okay, you're not going to the Motley Crue concert, or was that for Motley Crue or Keith Urban?
It was for Motley Crue. Motley Crue, they should have just hung it up. They retired. They did their last tour years ago. Vince Neil cannot sing.
Mm-hmm.
Get a different singer. I'll go see him if they have a different singer, but he does not provide value.
Look at Journey. Journey's still touring.
Yeah,
because Steve Perry got put out to pasture a long time ago. It happens.
Are you a Summerfest guy? Do you make the trip down?
I've only been a couple of times, but it's not for lack of. I love it. I wish I could go more often. There's just usually, when you're this far away up in the Chippewa Valley, it takes a little more planning to get down there. But when we lived down there, when our family was very young, when Sherry was going to medical school, Summerfest was an annual thing. Now again, that's 30 years back, but I'm sure we would enjoy it, every bit as much, if not more so.
Yeah, back then you'd be like, we're just going to drive down for the day and then maybe stay over, but we could drive through the night. We're fine. Well, nowadays you're like, I got to take 3 days, get 2 hotel rooms. I got to and have a day of recovery. And you just can't do that anymore.
No, you cannot. So Summerfest this year will be the weekends of June 20th, June 27th, and July 4th, I believe is what. Let me get that right.
Yeah.
I might 20th. It's a long lineup here. 20th, 21. 22. Oh my God. I can't even get to all of this. There's so much scrolling that I have to do here. So check it out online for the full lineup and give you something nice to think about on such a snowy day, which raises the question. I don't know how much is eventually going to fall, but we've talked about it a few times. Are we shoveling this or not? Are we
Luckily,
just
I
saying,
don't have to. Yeah.
yay, renting? So yeah, that's the one thing when you buy that first home, it's like our daughters used to joke when things would break in the apartments. If we needed something fixed, it's like, tell them that the maintenance man would come fix it. The man will come fix it. And then we got a house and something broke, and they're like, "Well, the man come fix it." And I'm like, "I'm the man."
Yeah.
And I clearly am going to have to take a longer time to fix this than the
Yeah.
previous man. But
Yeah.
we'll get it done one way or another. So, another thing along with Summerfest. Do you know what else? It brings me such joy every year to get. I was at a local retail establishment, and the little paper schedule for the Milwaukee Brewers.
Oh, I
the
need
little
my
trifold
magnets.
thing, and the magnets. Yeah, the magnet schedule sure is there too. But there's just something about, kind of like some people still like having a newspaper in their hands. I
Yeah.
like having this paper brewer schedule so that I know when they're playing.
For those not watching on the live stream, Pat is currently shaking a brewer schedule in the camera.
Look at this. And plus you get to find out all the like the Giannis jersey giveaway is
Yep.
on April 6th. There's a City Connect Hawaiian shirt day on July 27th, a puffy vest on September 21st.
That's not going to be high quality.
It reminds me, though, and I saw this post again recently. How do I know I lived in the good old days? Because back in my day, you could trust 20,000 kids with an actual size Major League Louisville Slugger on bat day and not feel like somebody was going to die of a concussion or an attack. We had bat day. I tell younger people that now, they're like, they gave out bats? Like mini bats, right? No, full-size Louisville Sluggers.
I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. They should not be giving those out. But let's all just admit something, that a bobblehead can cause blunt force trauma. So
a bobblehead can go in all kinds of places, to cause trouble. Sure. Look, anything you can, but full-size bats, that was always the best. And the kids would we'd start pounding that, on the stadium floor and just get the place rocking. Those were the days, kids. Now,
and that's been your note from Grandpa Pat.
Who's going to go back now and read his
And we
paper
liked
brewery
it back
schedule.
then.
That's just how we liked it. Absolutely. At 6:18, let's take a quick look at sports here. Damian Lillard had his third straight game with at least 30 points as the Milwaukee Bucks capitalized on Giannis's return to beat the Brooklyn Nets 115-108 on Thursday night. The Bucks' next game is Sunday evening at home against Oklahoma City. You can catch that game on Oshkosh Air Support, News from the Center in Richland Center, Lake Air in Amory, WRJN in Racine, and locally grown radio WFHR in Wisconsin Rapids. We jumped so hard into the weather and the sports, didn't even tell you what else was coming up today, where we're going to be hearing from Courier Newsroom national correspondent Keya Vakil in 15 minutes or so. Mark Jacob in our next hour talking about weasel words. Why won't the media just say things as they are? That and so much more ahead on this Friday morning, wherever you're listening across Wisconsin. When you're here, you're up north. Back in a bit on the Civic Media Radio Network. wishes to George Benson, who turns 81 years old today, and gave us one of those, landmark little light rock, little bit of crossover soft jazz hits with Breezin' back in the day. As Greg sways to the music, you can't help it, you know? Again, on a snowy day like this, you just want to hear George's guitar as it comes up here.
Just come on.
Smooth. Again,
I'm going to
more
download his greatest hits right now.
You should. A couple more tunes from George Benson along the way on this Friday morning on Up North News Radio. Let's give the phone number out, 855-75-CIVIC, 855-75-CIVIC. Would love to know, have you call in just to say where you're at, how much snow you got, what the roads are looking like. And if you're shy that way, text it. That same number is how you text us, 855-75-CIVIC. There is another way to text us, and that is through the Civic Media app. If you haven't downloaded that app yet, change that. Go get that app on your phone and be part of the contest that we have going on right now, the Ride into Spring Text to Win statewide contest coming up at 7:07. I'm going to give you today's keyword. You're going to go to the Civic Media app, pull up any one of the radio stations on the app, use the text button to text the station, and then text today's keyword. You'll be entered for an overnight stay at Chula Vista Resort in Wisconsin Dells, grand prizes that include bicycles, outdoor patio furniture, and much more. So stick around. 7:07 is when we'll do that as well. In the news today, I don't know if you heard about this. I mean, this has got people really upset. Imagine Hunter Biden being given control of the Democratic National Committee. And all donations to Democrats will go to lawyers instead. Instead of helping Democratic candidates, will go to lawyers working for Hunter Biden in the midst of this criminal investigation against him. Wait. I'm sorry. I'm being told that's not Hunter Biden and the Democratic Party. It's the Trump family and the Republican Party. Yes, here it is now. There was just a typo on the script where it said Hunter Biden. It was supposed to say the Trump family because there's been a new arrangement made with the Republican National Committee that a portion of donations that go to the newly formed Trump 47 fundraising committee to save America will be used to cover Donald Trump's legal bills. It's this is not normal, folks. It's not normal. If you're giving to a candidate, that's fine. You know that they may do all kinds of things with it. When you give to a party, you're expecting that your donation is going to be used to get Democrats or Republicans elected up and down the line. You would not want the Biden family taking over the Democratic National Committee any more so than you would want the Trump family taking over, because again, it's always one big grift. It's one big money grab. And I'm sad at the number of, sweet little old ladies and other well-meaning people who felt like they were helping to save America and make America great by sending in their check for $25 or, $250. And that's a lot for them. But they think that, Donald Trump, that nice young man, this is the way to go. It's not the way to go. It's going to pay his lawyers for his many legal cases against him. One of them that was especially in the news yesterday and continues to be is Donald Trump's effort to find money, not just for the legal bills, but now to pay for his bond if he wants to appeal the judgment against him in that civil fraud case, where he was running his business fraudulently. He was inflating the value of properties for selling purposes, but deflating the value of properties for tax purposes, doing it to such an extent you couldn't look the other way. You couldn't not file criminal charges because it was so egregious. And now he's been, found guilty in that civil fraud case. If he wants to appeal, he's got to put up the money first. That's $464 million was the judgment against him. And this so-called billionaire is having a tough time scraping together $500 million. Apparently $500 million doesn't go as far as it used to. And more than 30 different entities, whether it's banks, insurance companies, hedge funds, whatever, have already told Trump no. as Trump's lawyers told a judge this week. And as a result, the judge in this case is now warning that he wants to see any details on the Trump organization's attempts to secure a bond in this civil fraud case. Why is that? Because it's one thing to write a check or to put up liquid cash. It's another thing to put up your properties as bond. But how much are those properties really worth? Remember, the whole thing that got him in trouble for this was inflating the value of his property. So they may very well be leveraged. They may very well have loans out against them right now, which makes them a little bit less valuable as Trump tries to post his bond. And of course, there's the foreign angle to it of, who does he turn to get this money? Does he turn to the Saudis? Does he turn to Russian oligarchs? Does he turn to some other foreign entities? And should a major party candidate for president be financially in debt to either hostile nations or other foreign entities? Same questions we asked 4 years ago. I get that, but the questions are still valid here because you want to know whose side is Donald Trump on. And clearly, given all that he has said to try to undo the NATO alliance, all that he's done to undo free and fair elections in the United States, it's pretty clear to see where he lies in terms of defending America versus defending the Trump organization. And he's going to go with the Trump organization every single time. So remember that when you're writing that check out, just think, would I write a check out to Hunter Biden? Would I write a check out to Jared Kushner, who got reportedly $2 billion from the Saudis to start his own hedge fund after the presidency? Because of course that doesn't buy any access. That doesn't smack like a quid pro quo at all, does it? Of course it does. And that's why the judge wants to be extremely careful on this, because if he can't post the bond, then yeah, Trump Tower won't belong to Trump, along with several other properties. That's called consequences. That's the consequences of not playing by the rules that everybody else has to play when you're paying your taxes, when you're buying and selling your properties. No one person's above the law. No matter how much he tries to put himself above the law, he can't do that. It's as simple as that. Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasewicz said Thursday she will not recuse herself from a case dealing with the legality of mobile voting sites. A conservative law firm, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, filed a lawsuit back in December of 2022 saying that city officials illegally used a voting van to collect absentee ballots around the city that year. The court has yet to decide whether to take the case. If Protasewicz were to recuse herself for some reason, then it could be that case deadlocks at 3-3. But Protasewicz said Thursday, she said she can act impartially in the case. And I have no desire to act impartially on this case. When we're talking about voting, again, there's only one political class, political party in this country dedicated to suppressing votes, to not making it easy for American citizens to vote. And you see that in cases like this. Courier Newsroom national correspondent Keya Vakil joins us on the other side. This is Up North News Radio. Back now at 6:34 on this Friday morning, Courier Newsroom national correspondent Keya Vakil joins us as always this week to go through some of the headlines. Keya, how are you today?
I'm pretty well, Pat. How about yourself?
Very good, thank you. Let's jump right into it here because the there's a contrast that you can make here with what the Biden administration is looking to do and who they're looking out for versus what House Republicans say they would do if they could run the world. And so let's start on the Biden end that's looking out for consumers. And the latest thing deals with a monopoly type lawsuit against Apple over the iPhone. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so this is something that's been, kind of percolating for a little while now. But on Thursday, the Justice Department and 16 states and Washington, D.C. filed an antitrust lawsuit against Apple, basically alleging that the company violated antitrust laws because of the way they have, created, marketed, and sold the iPhone in a way to keep people reliant on them and make it virtually impossible to switch to another device. And basically, if you're in a group chat with someone with an Android, it's kind of a not a user-friendly process. And things like that. They're, Apple products like Digital Wallet, which can't be used on other, Androids. Basically, things like this. They're alleging that Apple has created a device that basically requires people to continue using it and not switch, and that therefore they can make a ton more money by allegedly violating antitrust laws.
Oh, it's so the case for me. I mean, I was an early user of Apple Macintosh, MacBooks and iMacs and things like that. So it only made sense to get an iPhone, but then I was a Samsung, a Galaxy customer for a while. This was several years back. And I thought I would actually prefer this for a phone, but I'm already kind of in the cult of Apple. I've got a watch here that depends on it. I've got the phone, I've got the AirTags. Even if I wanted to try some other devices, it would be just a huge pain. And that's the kind of anti-competitive thing that they're alleging is taking place here.
Exactly. And, we'll see what happens with it. But it's hard to look at Apple's market share and just the widespread use of it and not see something there that feels a little off, from basically you need an Apple specific charger. Obviously, there's a lot of knockoff chargers, but, they have essentially made it so that if you want to communicate easily with friends and family or use their digital wallet or use certain other Apple features, you have to have an Apple phone. Otherwise, it's just going to be kind of a headache. Like the people I know who have droids, really like their droids, but they know that they're sacrificing something to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for folks who are like, well, that's just brand loyalty or whatever, it's like, no. I can get a Samsung TV, but that doesn't mean that my speakers, for it or the stereo or whatever have to, we can mix and match. And there's no reason why we can't be doing more of that in, consumer electronics like this. But this whole thing here is just, it strikes me as keeping with something the Biden administration has been doing all along. And that's much more of a focus on the consumer.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that I have been really blown away by and impressed by is the sheer scope of the challenges they've made against mergers and their efforts on antitrust. It's a total 180 from the last 40 years of American government that basically blessed mergers without a second thought and really allowed monopolies to take hold in everything from airlines to grocery stores and really everything in between. We saw the Biden administration was able to block the JetBlue Spirit merger. They're suing to block the Kroger Albertsons merger.
The junk fees and late fees that we talked about
with credit card late fees, convenience fees, all these things that really add up. And so, these are things that affect people's lives, and we saw a new report this week that talked about from the Federal Trade Commission, which has been incredibly aggressive in trying to fight for consumers' rights and wallets. The report found that large grocery stores and supermarkets took advantage of the supply chain issues in the pandemic to effectively, raise prices and pressure suppliers to favor them over their competitors. And so, big monopolies really are not good for people, whether it's in the ag sector, in the food sector, in the airline sector, in the hospital sector, in the pharmaceutical sector. No matter what, you name it, mom and pop stores are almost a thing of the past. It's just, it's a shame. And at the same time, though, we are seeing a resurgent antitrust movement that is really making an impact thanks to the Biden administration.
Right, because I mean, you've had 40 years of Reaganism, which
Yep.
essentially said, or Reaganomics that said, well, the businesses are going to self-police and they're going to look out for the consumer and for the worker, and obviously that hasn't been the case, and there's just been too much free reign given at such a cost to the consumer that
Yeah.
it's nice again. Now, look, this isn't sexy. I don't know how the Biden campaign team gets out there and talks about these issues other than to say they come right to the kitchen table. They come right to your bank account. They come right to your wallet. They don't get the flash of, an abortion ban or, wars overseas or whatever. But these things really touch people's lives. And if the Biden campaign can figure out how to make all of this resonate, I think they're going to see approval numbers go up from where they are right now.
I completely agree. I think it might be a secret weapon of sorts that they haven't quite tapped into as much as they should this year, because you can make a strong case, arguably more on this issue than almost any other issue, with the exception of maybe infrastructure, that they have created a whole new narrative around monopoly and antitrust. And that sounds really boring and academic, but if you only have one option to buy something, whether it's an airline ticket or an iPhone or a mobile phone or one grocery store, they can charge you whatever they want. Capitalism, is supposed to be about competition and free markets and whatnot. But if there's only one option, then you don't have a choice. And so giving people a choice and increasing competition and boosting the number of companies you can buy from saves money for consumers and also will lead to better products and better service.
Right.
I don't know if you've flown recently, but it's a terrible experience now.
It is, and it was never stellar, but my goodness, it's just gotten in a bad way here. And again, some more competition, it would probably be a good thing. Somewhat related, again, looking at the consumer. In this case,
Yep.
the consumer would be somebody who took out student loans, and the administration constantly looking for ways to forgive or reduce that debt. It would immediately put a jolt into the local economies of the borrowers. What's happening there?
Yeah, so on Thursday, the Biden administration announced that 78,000 more Americans who work in public service jobs like teachers, nurses, firefighters, so on, are getting their federal student loans canceled. There is this program called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program that was passed under President George Bush to help people who join the public sector and contribute to their communities to forgive their loans after a decade of payments. The problem was, the rules and the sort of errors taken by student loan servicers basically made the program a total mess until Biden took office. In the 14 years between 2007 and 2021, only 7,000 borrowers had loans canceled under the program. In the last couple of years, through the Biden administration made reforms and tweaks to the program, they've forgiven 871,000 workers' loans. And so, I can't do that math. That's like a couple 1,000% increase, maybe more. It's a ridiculous increase. And these are people who, again, work as teachers, work as nurses, work as firefighters, work in public jobs or in nonprofit jobs in some cases, that are not highly paid in most cases. And, if we want people to keep doing these jobs, we need to make clear that will be rewarded. And by, adhering to this program as it was supposed to work, they are doing that. And that is huge.
Very much so. Now, here comes the contrast. The Republicans in the House, a particular group of Republicans in the House, bless their hearts, I guess. They're not hiding, the things that they want to do. They're coming right out and saying it. So I think some of these things deserve amplification.
Yeah, so there's this group called the Republican Study Committee. It's made up of 80% roughly of House Republican lawmakers, more than 170 of them. So it's the vast majority of Republicans in the House. They released this document that's almost 200 pages, I believe. And effectively, it calls for raising the retirement age for Social Security for future retirees. It wants to totally restructure Medicare in a way that would threaten the program. It endorses the Life at Conception Act, which would basically ban abortion at 15 weeks and could threaten IVF care. It would it's just top to bottom a wild document to release in an election year, especially. It takes points from Paul Ryan's former Medicare plan. It is a document that if voters knew about it, they would vote against Republicans in a landslide because no one wants these things.
And it's worth noting that of Wisconsin's Republican members of Congress, 4 of them are on this study committee. That would be Scott Fitzgerald, Glenn Grothman, Brian Stile, and Tom Tiffany. You don't see Gallagher's name on there or Van Orden. Not to say that they wouldn't disagree with a lot of what's in there, but again, the numbers and the aim are right there for folks. They're not fooling anybody. When somebody shows you who they are and what they would do, believe them, and also remember what I said, I think last week on this program, when groups like this talk about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, you're the waste. You're the waste that they're talking about cutting. It's not, some mythical welfare queen figure or whatever. You're the waste. You're standing between them and the next tax cut for millionaires. That's all I want people to remember. Meanwhile, the president has been, I don't like this word, but it was in one of the headlines, wooing Latino voters in Nevada and Arizona. Courier Newsroom has outlets in each of those, so I'm sure you've been following our teams out there to tell us, what is the challenge for the president in trying to make sure he wins those votes or wins them back.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the key challenges is the sheer cost of renting in these places. Rent costs, housing costs in Arizona and Nevada, really everywhere. But, the Southwest is one of the, main places where they've just soared in the past handful of years. And that's due to a variety of reasons. The housing supply in this country has not kept up with demand virtually anywhere. And people are flocking to the Southwest. People are flocking to the Sun Belt. And so a lot of people are leaving high cost places like California and New York, moving to places like Arizona and Nevada and Texas and North Carolina. And that's sending housing costs rising because if you don't build enough housing, as we've learned in California, things are going to get really out of hand. And so that's happening all across the country now, unfortunately. And so that is disproportionately affecting people, a lot of Latinos, a lot of young voters. And so, when he was in Nevada, Biden talked about his housing proposals in his budget, which would, help create more affordable housing, help tenants with financial assistance. And so, that's what he focused on. And, I think that's going to be an important issue in addition to, other economic issues in terms of wages, in terms of grocery prices, people, the economy broadly is very strong, but you can't ignore the fact that costs have gone up in a lot of sectors, and so he's not. He is talking about that every single day, which is what he should be doing.
And it bears repeating that again, the housing crisis would have been here anyway. It's much like the labor shortage. We saw these things coming. There wasn't nearly enough done to prepare for these things. And so now it's on Biden and anybody else who cares to try to somehow address these things that are happening right now. We didn't even have time to get into our last topic, which would have been the Florida Republican primary, which was supposed to be the crowning achievement for Ron DeSantis and make him the nominee, which is why we should stop predicting things way in advance of elections. Keya Vakil, national correspondent for Courier Newsroom. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great weekend.
You too, Pat. Thank you.
All right. And we will have today's history lesson and more coming up right after this. This is Up North News Radio on the Civic Media Radio Network.
don't need no education.
Greg Bach's alternative lyrics. We don't need no coconuts.
Good Lord, yes. You get me.
This was the number one song on this day in 1980. Pink Floyd topping the Hot 100 chart with Another Brick in the Wall. It would stay at the number one spot for 4 weeks. A rare hit single for the band. Their only other top 40 appearance was Money, which only got as high as number 13 on the charts way back in 1973. Today's history lesson includes a couple of composer birthdays. We've got Andrew Lloyd Webber, who is 76 today. And then there's Stephen Sondheim, who was born this day in 1930, passed away in 2021. We mentioned it before, but Pittsburgh native and jazz guitarist George Benson is 81 today.
They say the neon lights are bright on Broadway.
On this day in 1894, the first Stanley Cup hockey competition is held for the first time in Montreal, this day in 1894. And on this day in 1934, the first Masters tournament was held at Augusta National Golf Club. I'm sure he's saying, why did he pause? He paused because he's trying to do math at a very early hour here to say happy 67th birthday to Stephanie Mills, the R&B singer.
You got it. Good job, buddy.
First got known in The Wiz. Play the song.
I never knew love like this before. Now I'm lonely.
Math is hard sometimes. It's 6:50 in the morning.
It's 6:50 in the morning.
6:50 when I've only had, as I hold it for the camera, my Roy Kent mug, because it's a Roy Kent kind of day.
I'm going to see him on Sunday.
That's right, you are. That's so cool. So yeah, it's that kind of a day. But and of course, it also plays into my biggest fear that despite all the whatever work I do to put this segment together, and I go, happy 67th birthday to Stephanie Mills, and somebody calls in or texts in, she died 2 years ago or something. It's like, you don't want to wish happy birthday to dead people. It's always poor form. So I've been taught.
I agree with that. People will say like happy heavenly birthday. I'm like, just say you miss them.
Yeah.
Just say you miss them.
That'll do. On this day in 1972, the Eisenstadt v. Baird case, the U.S. Supreme Court decided on this day in 1972 that unmarried people have the right to possess contraceptives.
Boy,
any younger listeners have just fallen over to say, wait, there was a time when it was illegal for unmarried people to have contraceptives? Yes. We've come a long way, baby, in 50, 60 years, but there's people that want to drag us back to those times when, women couldn't have a bank account in their own name and so many other things. So it's why we press on as, people try to take us backwards. The Eagles released an album on this day in 1974. The album was On the Border, and this was the big single. Singing Already Gone, coming up here.
Well, I heard some people talking just the other day.
On this day in 1975, Barry Manilow made his first U.S. TV appearance, performing Mandy and It's a Miracle. And you're welcome that I didn't play Mandy for you, at this hour of the day. That'd be like playing the Paul McCartney Christmas song, for goodness sakes. The number one song this day in 1986 was By Heart. On this day in 2019, Special Counsel Robert Mueller submitted his report to U.S. Attorney General William Barr. The Mueller report, however, was then, shall we say, creatively interpreted by Bill Barr for several weeks before we got to look at the real contents, and by that time, they were able to basically put the spin on it that there was a lot less coordination between the Trump campaign and Russian, shall we say, interlopers than there really was. Keegan Michael Key, the comedic actor, that's the word I was looking for, 53 years old today. Reese Witherspoon is 48 years old today. And, of course, Wisconsin's own J.J. Watt turns 35 today. So congratulations, happy birthday to him and all that is going on here today. I have a national day calendar here, don't I?
Ooh.
See, sometimes you got to flip the page here. This is, here we go. Greg, this is National Talk Like William Shatner Day. This was not a good example.
Know what you're talking about. I just talk like this, Pat. Why are you making fun of me?
And why did somebody think to make that a holiday? But apparently it is Talk Like William Shatner Day, which seems related to the next item here. It is National Goof Off Day. It's also National As Young As You Feel Day, which I think is supposed to help some of us, embrace our youth a little bit more. But if it's really as young as you feel, and I currently feel about 78 years old, that's probably not the best kind of day to have that. It is International Seal Day, and it is World Water Day. And I can't say enough on that end of things that we take our water and our clean water for granted. We take it for granted so hard compared to so many other parts of the world. I know, being somebody who's been a Rotary Club member in a few different places over the years, the work that they've done in other countries to help people get access to wells or just to clean water infrastructure. And look, we face threats to it right here in Wisconsin from all manner of things, not just the PFAS, the industrial chemicals, but also, high capacity wells, that from mega farms. Of course, you have all kinds of industrial pollution. You have, runoff into fields. And these things, cleaning up this money doesn't happen for free. That's when people talk, like in Wausau, we talked to Katie Rosenberg the other day about, how much it's costing to take PFAS out of the water. Well, yeah, because we want that clean water, and we also want to make sure that people stop polluting it and are held accountable if they do. Coming up in our next hour, we will talk to Mark Jacob a bit from his Stop the Press's newsletter and Media Misses video series, and his theme of the week, weasel words used by media outlets. That's coming up. You're Up North.
I live another life. These dreams that sleep when it's cold outside.
Good morning, Brittany.
Good morning. How are you?
Snow covered, but
Right.
you know,
Just you wait.
it's pretty. All right, 20 seconds.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
It's 7:06 now on Up North News Radio across the Civic Media Radio Network on this Friday morning, March 22nd. Nice to have you along. Coming up this hour, we're going to talk to Mark Jacob, author of the Stop the Presses newsletter and co-host of the Media Misses video series, about the way some news outlets are having a very tough time calling things what they are. From racism to anti-Semitism to connections to Russia, too many in the media are using what Mark refers to as weasel words at a time when straight talk is needed more than ever. All right, let's see. 7:07. We got a contest we got to run here, and that, of course, would be the Civic Media Ride into Spring text contest. Again, a statewide text contest where we give you a keyword in just a couple of seconds here. You go to the Civic Media app. You call up any one of the radio stations on the app, like 93.5 The Tap here in Chippewa Falls. There's a button there where you can call the show. There's a button there where you can text the show. Just hit that text button and text today's keyword. And that's it. You're in the running. Texts are drawn at random 4 times a day to win an overnight stay at Chula Vista Resort in Wisconsin Dells. There's also grand prizes like a 3-in-1 blender, outdoor patio furniture, bikes. So what you want to do is, now that you got that app ready, text the word green, the color green. Text that right now, and you will be entered in that contest. A nice way to handle things on a snowy morning. We find out that up in Tigerton from listener Rob, it is snowing 25 degrees. We got 4 inches of snow. I've been out plowing since 3 a.m., he says. Roads are snow-covered, slushy, and slippery, still snowing moderately. There's the view from Tigerton. Now the view throughout all the rest of the state brings us to meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Brittany, good morning.
Good morning. It's a beautiful view out there, but slippery. Whew.
That's right. Yep. And Greg was giving you all kinds of praise off the top of the show about how you nailed it, where the precipitation line would be, and I think that made Greg a happy driver, or at least
Aw.
as happy as you can be.
Until I hit Waukesha.
Right.
Yep. Roads hadn't been treated yet by that point.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
So be
Yeah.
careful. There's plenty of roads out there still not treated. So you use care.
Yes, I've seen a lot of semi trucks jackknifed, cars in the ditches across the highways, all statewide. So please be careful. A lot of road closures ongoing too from some of those crashes. Just remember, if you are hitting the road this morning, drive slow, take it easy. Don't be in any rush. Okay. This is some pretty rough weather out there, and we're still not in the worst of it, to be honest with you. Southern Wisconsin, you're still looking at another 2 to 4 inches throughout this morning, and it doesn't wind down until this afternoon. In fact, into the Green Bay area, Fox Valley, and along Lake Michigan, you could see the snow continuing through this evening potentially as some of those flurries ramp off the lake. So still some accumulations out there as we go through this morning, but everything for a majority of the state should wind down by this afternoon. We'll get a little break tomorrow before the next snowstorm. And I have to mention it because it's going to be hitting over this weekend, and it is massive. Looking at winter storm watches already going out for portions of northwest Wisconsin. And in fact, if you're along Lake Superior, you are looking at anywhere from 1 to potentially 2.5 feet of snowfall on Sunday.
Yikes.
Yes.
Wow.
And a lot of that is going to be spilling into areas like Eau Claire, even as far away as Wausau. We could see anywhere from 6 to 10 inches. Pushing a foot is not out of question as we go into Sunday. And then this all flips to rain on Monday for a majority of the states.
It's my fault. It's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
I know.
I put fuel stabilizer in the snowblower last weekend, thinking, yeah, we're good to go. It's me. And again,
You jinxed
I
us.
cannot
I
believe
apologize
you
for
did this
that.
to us.
I know I did that. What are you thinking right now in terms of when that Sunday storm starts moving into the state, into the north and western parts? Like, is
Yeah,
this
so
Sunday
it could
afternoon or an overnight or what?
it could be here as early as Saturday night through those overnight hours, really ramping up by late Sunday morning. So all day Sunday, I would not be driving around, especially into the northern half of the state. And then for the statewide, as we flip from this rain or from snow to rain, Monday morning looks like a wintry mix with ice out there.
All right.
I
Well,
know.
let's change the subject for a second.
Okay, yeah.
You know what, Brittany? I really was liking you a lot, and then you go and tell the
Don't.
weathery truth.
Don't
I
blame
know.
the messenger. She's trying to do her best from her little studio there, which has gotten a bit
Just
of a
getting nicer and
makeover.
nicer.
I know, I'm
I mean,
trying.
it looks very cozy, but there's a light fixture of some sort that yesterday I thought was maybe a blue lightsaber, but today it's more like a red lightsaber, which leads me to ask whether that you have gone over to the dark side. Are you some kind of a Sith meteorologist?
Right? No. I chose the red today as like the warning. Like it is not good conditions out there.
Well,
My
that's
blue was a
fun.
I
prep
like
for
that.
cold.
You're like the weather ball on top of some buildings. I like
Yeah.
that very much.
We're gonna start calling you Darth Cumulus.
Yes, I love it. I love these nicknames.
Oh, that's so great. All right, Brittany, thanks so much. Stay safe. Have a good weekend. We'll see you Monday.
You too. Thanks.
All right, temperatures around the state, all in the 20s here, ranging from 20 in Park Falls and 21 in Hayward to 28 in Waukesha, 29 in Madison. Everybody somewhere in between all of that as we go along. Reminder, you can always call the show at 855-75-CIVIC. That's a new number. Jot it down. Call into the show anytime, 855-75-CIVIC, to follow along with things that we might be talking about today. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is the daily newsletter that comes out from Up North News from Christina Laurie. That's what I was looking to say. And we were mentioning at the end of the last hour that J.J. Watt, today is his 35th birthday. And Christina has put in there some of the biggest moments from the Badger legend's first 35 years here on Earth from his playing career. She's also got a note about how National Puppy Day, I believe, is tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow's National Puppy Day, Greg. So please be prepared to spoil the little fur ball over there.
We are currently fighting.
Oh, you're currently fighting?
Yeah, we had a bad day
no.
yesterday.
Oh,
Really bad
okay.
day. Oh yeah.
Tomorrow you'll make it up on National Puppy Day, including this article about an ice cream shop just for dogs. It's in the
Where?
3rd Ward of Milwaukee.
Oh.
It's called Salty Paws, and
Mhm.
it sells ice cream and bakery treats for dogs and only dogs. So, make of that what you will. But yeah, it's a dog-friendly establishment for National
Nice.
Puppy Day. Yeah, I thought so too. Also in the newsletter, a story about how the Biden administration is working to cap late fees on credit cards at $8. Again, we talked about that with Keya Vakil in our last hour, and that whole Biden administration focus on the American consumer and all of the many things that have been done over the past nearly 4 years. There's also a link in there to learn more about the Badger women's hockey team as they get set to head to the Final Four, or the Frozen Four, if you will. Let's see, when is that? It's Friday evening tonight. They are in Durham, New Hampshire. The University of New Hampshire is hosting, and they are playing in the national semifinal tonight against Colgate. And if they advance, they will play the winner of the other semifinal today, which would be Ohio State versus Clarkson. So it could set up another national championship battle between the Badger women and the Ohio State women, if it goes that way. But we've got to get through tonight's game with Colgate first. As far as the Badger men's hockey team goes, everybody will find out sometime this weekend, I think Sunday evening, because several of those conference tournaments are wrapping up, and then that will determine who gets in the brackets, and we'll find out where the Badger men go in the NCAA tournament. Of course, the Badger men's basketball team is in the NCAA tournament tonight. They will be playing a 12 seed James Madison tonight at 8:40 in New York City. If they win, they would go on and play the winner of Duke versus Vermont. Marquette, meanwhile, has a game this afternoon. A number 2 seed, the Golden Eagles, are taking on 15 seed Western Kentucky this afternoon at 1. If Marquette wins, they will play the winner of the 7 and 10 game, which would be 7th ranked Florida and 10 seed Boise State, Colorado. But back to the Badger game tonight. Again, 8:40 is the tip, but the broadcast begins at 7:30 on locally grown radio in Wisconsin Rapids, news from the center in Richland Center, Lake Air in Amory, and WRJN in Racine. So you'll want to be all a part of that. If you missed the games yesterday, and I did, but what I'm reading right here is that there were several big upsets. There were 3 different times where an 11 seed defeated a 6 seed last night. But then there was also a 14 that brought down a 3. That would be Kentucky, a 3rd seed, going down, upset by Oakland University, 80-76. And a large part of that was Oakland University's Jack Golke, who attended Pewaukee High School and was nailing 3-pointers apparently at ease and helped propel Oakland University to that upset over Kentucky. Over to the NBA, Damian Lillard had his 3rd straight game with 30 points, and Giannis was back in the lineup as the Bucks beat the Brooklyn Nets 115-108. They will have a home game Sunday evening hosting Oklahoma City. And again, the usual stations to hear Bucks basketball, stations in Oshkosh, Richland Center, Amory, Racine, and Wisconsin Rapids, where you can tune in. But there's also going to be baseball today. Spring training baseball, the Brewers versus Kansas City. You can catch that game on News from the Center, WRCE and Richland Center, starting today at 3 o'clock. Only 6 days now until opening day, next week, Thursday, in what is it now? Citibank Field. Where do the Mets play?
You almost said Shea Stadium.
I know. Shea became Citibank or Citi Field, or I've always said. Go ahead.
Go on. I was gonna say I saw a baseball game in Shea Stadium. It was amazing.
Did you?
Yeah,
Was
I saw
it like
them play
Tom Seaver pitching or something?
Oh, I have no idea. At the time, I wasn't into baseball. I just had the chance to see a Mets game, and I'm like, no, let's go. So.
Yeah. Oh no, good on you. That's great. I've always said when some of these places, change their stadium names to like corporate names, it's like, well, they're paying you for the name. They're not paying me for the name. I called it Candlestick Park for years after it became like 3Com Stadium or something. I'm like, if 3Com wants to send me some money, I'll change the name of the stadium, but
everyone's going to price.
Yes, that's right. All right. Let's take a pause before we talk more about what's in the news today. Mark Jacob coming up at 7:30. Dan Schumacher just called in sick, so we'll talk sports on our own here coming up in another half hour to wrap up our conversation here on Up North News Radio, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. 7:20 on this Friday morning, March 22nd. Nice to have you back on Up North News Radio. Up North News is a separate entity from Civic Media. Up North News is part of Courier Newsroom, and part of Courier Newsroom also includes the Vibes Only podcast with Brian Derrick and Glennis Mahar. This week, they talk about Donald Trump's unhinged rally in Ohio, where he said migrants were not people, but rather animals. He also said there'd be a bloodbath if he didn't win the election, and he's the one now trying to say that Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. And they'll also discuss what really should be the biggest story right now, and that is, Donald Trump's former vice president refusing to endorse him. They'll talk about that bill that threatens to ban TikTok, and another case heard this week by the U.S. Supreme Court with huge implications for the government's ability to weigh in on misinformation when it's put on social media platforms. All of that part of the Vibes Only podcast. Go to couriernewsroom.com or wherever you get your podcasts for more information. Greg, I have to go back to the brackets for a moment, not necessarily to talk sports, but to talk politics.
Okay.
If you are some kind of a political official, elected official, candidate, whatever the case may be, there's certain rules. And one of the rules is if you're filling out the brackets, who are you putting in the final four? Who are you advancing? Are you putting the Badgers there? Yes, because you have faith in them. Is anybody going to hold it to you seriously? No, not really. But when you just go out there and advertise, the Badgers are Marquette, they're not going anywhere. Well, you might be Eric Hovde because he's has picked a team from Indiana. He's picked Purdue. He's picked a Big Ten rival to the Badgers.
The Boilermakers?
Hovde, put on Twitter. At the end of the day, Purdue is too tough and will cut down the nets in Phoenix. Hovde is a University of Wisconsin alum. And
I know. His ads tell me all the time.
He's wearing a UW pullover, in his picture. Politicians, of course, they love to show off their NCAA tournament brackets. They love to show the home state team going all the way. Governor Evers posted his bracket on Tuesday with both Wisconsin and Marquette in the Elite Eight and the Badgers winning. Evers posted, "You better believe I've got Badger basketball going all the way." So just again for Eric Hovde, whose launch has had its rough moments. If you're going to pick another team besides the Badgers or Marquette, don't pick a conference rival. I mean, where's your head? Where's your head on this? So
I don't understand most of the things. He did an interview with some podcast the other day. He said that prices will start to come down when we as a country stops printing money. It's like as soon as we stop printing money, you'll see those prices come down. I'm like,
that's not how it works.
That's not how it works, buddy.
No.
At all. And you're running on, I run a business, so I know how to run a country.
Yeah. But by the way, if I'm not mistaken, stock market set another record yesterday, another record high. The Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ are all at all-time highs. We've never talked about that here. You never hear about it anywhere. And yet, if Trump were president, we'd be hearing that nonstop, that the Wall Street and the markets are at record highs. It's barely a blip on the radar. And that's something that's right into the wheelhouse of something I can talk to Mark Jacob about in a couple of minutes here.
Yeah.
On our social media feeds right now through Up North News, there's some video, some very sad video, I have to admit, of people leaving their workplace for the last time. And the workplace is Sacred Heart Hospital. Here in the Chippewa Valley in Eau Claire. Sacred Heart is closing its doors after more than 100 years. And another affiliated hospital, St. Joseph's, here in Chippewa Falls, is closing imminently. Again, it's a Springfield, Illinois healthcare corporation, Hospital Sisters Health System, that is making the move, closing the hospitals, closing the Prevea Clinic, and putting a whole lot of people out of work and adding more uncertainty to the healthcare of Chippewa Valley residents. To that end, the legislature has the opportunity to send money to the Chippewa Valley to try to retain some of these employees, retain some of these healthcare workers in some other form. until maybe some other new group wants to come in and provide health care. But so far, it sits languishing with the Republicans in the legislature. Governor Evers had given that bill a partial veto so that they could be more flexible with how officials in the Chippewa Valley spend the money to try to maintain a steady level of healthcare services here in western Wisconsin. And Republicans did not like that he did some line item vetoes on the bill. And as a result, they are refusing to free up the funds. And so there could be additional aid going to the Chippewa Valley, but that's not happening right now. There's some news about the Enbridge pipeline that cuts through northern Wisconsin and then through Michigan as well. It's a Canadian pipeline. It originates in Canada. It ends in Canada, but goes across Wisconsin and Michigan along the way. It's controversial. It's getting older. We had a guest on last week talking about her new documentary about how this pipeline, known as Line 5, is cutting through the Bad River Reservation of Lake Superior, Chippewa, and they don't want that. They don't want that pipeline there anymore. It's aging. They're afraid it could have a catastrophic leak at any time. Michigan officials have the same fear. The Enbridge pipeline has leaked there in the past quite badly. And so they, along with folks in Wisconsin, are pressing to have the pipeline closed entirely. And that continues to be in court. The most recent development is that Michigan officials have pressed a federal appeals court to move the lawsuit from federal court to state court, arguing that state environmental protection laws are what's at play. Enbridge is saying, no, this is an international thing because it crosses the border into the U.S., but it's a Canada-to-Canada pipeline, and it crosses through these states that have environmental laws, that have environmental concerns, and where courts could take care of this matter. But for now, Enbridge is trying to keep this matter in federal court. They are trying to upgrade the pipeline. They are trying to build an extension of the pipeline around the Red Cliff Reservation, so it's not cutting through there, or not Red Cliff, Bad River. I'm sorry, the Bad River Reservation. They're trying to go around it. Unfortunately, they're going around it upstream. So even if there's still a pipeline rupture in the Bad River, it will still have horrible impacts on the indigenous folks there, as well as Lake Superior, where the Bad River empties into. And so there's many calls for the pipeline to be shut down. In one case, a judge has ordered the pipeline to be shut down, but in, I believe, a very extended period. I think they've got like 3 years or so to wind down operations of Line 5. But on and on the courts go, and we'll continue to monitor any developments that would affect folks here up north. And one last point I wanted to make for this half hour, and it's about everybody's favorite congressperson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who got a very wide-ranging smackdown from Americans this week, when earlier this week she tried to take credit for money that's coming into her district in Georgia through the bipartisan infrastructure bill. No, people reminded her, you voted against that. You don't get to take credit for the pipeline or for the construction, jobs, and infrastructure that are coming into your district. Mark Jacob is next. You're up north. How's it going, Mark?
Doing well.
All right, good deal. I've been throughout the show. I've been teasing the weasel words, so
Good.
we're gonna come right out of the gate with that. Anything else in particular on this week's to-do list?
No, I'm happy to also talk about what you were mentioning about the stock market and just the basic kind of way economic news is dealt with in the media.
Okay.
Let me find.
All right, 10 seconds till we're back. Marking George Benson's 81st birthday today. This masquerade, which I didn't realize till yesterday, was written by the legendary Leon Russell. Coming up Monday, Motherhood for Good will join us. Our friends there will talk about the right-wing takeover of school boards and what people need to know when vetting candidates for their local boards of education. If you ever miss an episode of the show, you can either subscribe to us as a podcast or head over to civicmedia.us. And there, pull down the shows menu. You'll see every show there. And on each show page, you'll see hour by hour, each hour of programming. And you can listen back right there on the website or again, in podcast form. So civicmedia.us is the place to do that. One news note I don't want to forget here. we want y'all to be careful around school buses anyway, but that appears to have been a problem for a few too many drivers. And so Governor Evers yesterday signed a bipartisan bill that elevates the consequences of failing to stop for a school bus with its flashing lights. The minimum fine had been $30. The minimum fine is now $500, and the maximum has gone from $300 up to $1,000. So blowing past a school bus with flashing lights will now be a minimum $500 ticket up to $1,000. Again, just underscoring the commitment to prioritize our children's safety. The governor actually signed 54 different bills yesterday, a lot of them comparatively minor. He vetoed one that where the Republicans in the legislature were again trying to take away some of his power to appoint people to positions, and we may get into that next week. But for now, let's get back on track with our regular Friday morning guest, Mark Jacob, who is the author of the Stop the Presses newsletter and has a video series called Media Misses as well. And we're going to start by talking about this week's topics with Media Misses. Mark, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. Doing great.
All right. I just think back to the late John McCain, and the thing that really got him some bipartisan attention and admiration back in 2000 was when he just used the phrase straight talk. Just, if you see something, call it what it is. And, straight talk was refreshing. And yet we still find ourselves wishing that more media outlets could engage in straight talk when they're trying to describe what somebody said or what somebody stands for. And instead, as you put it in this week's edition of Media Misses, they use what are called weasel words. Tell us about weasel words.
Yeah, that's a term that is really commonly used in newsrooms when people when both newsmakers and the news media avoid saying things the way they are. When you see the phrase racially tinged, instead of racist, that's a way to we don't want to call someone racist even though they obviously are. Or you call something controversial. That's just just a blanket statement in which you're not going to get specific about why a person or an idea is controversial. You're just going to kind of throw that out there, kind of throw shade on it. That's just kind of lame too. And you see things, Vivek Ramaswamy, for example, in the New York Times, he was described as having a penchant for dispensing with the facts. Which is different from being a liar somehow, but you tell me how. I don't know how. But he is a penchant, Pat. I mean, it's like that. And, you see, what set me off was the New York Times talking about Mark Robinson. That's the crazy guy who's the Republican nominee for governor in North Carolina, who is a Holocaust denier and doesn't believes that women should be subservient to men and stuff like that. I mean, he's just kind of a nut. And they the New York Times called him he said he was widely seen as anti-Semitic. I mean, the guy he's a Holocaust denier, and he said a lot of other crazy stuff. He said the Jewish bankers are part of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and stuff like that. He is a nut, and he's an anti-Semite. And when the New York Times says widely seen as anti-Semitic, that's their way of kind of establishing some distance and being kind of afraid to call, a spade a spade.
And I think that there's too much of a waiting period. It's like after somebody's gone, Sheriff Bull Connor, is a racist. Right. They'll say the racist sheriff who, turned fire hoses and dogs on civil rights protesters. He was a racist while he was alive as well. And, may deny the label, but a label is not for somebody to accept or deny. A label is what a journalist sees and reports back to somebody. Right,
with that, with evidence, with lots of different kinds of evidence. Another thing that got me, New York Washington Post, for example, they're writing about Paul Manafort. And in another brain exploding bit of news here, Trump is supposedly thinking about bringing Paul Manafort, the convicted felon who was conspiring with the Russians and was sharing polling information with them, and was just really. I mean, he was a money launderer too. I mean, the guy's a terrible person, and supposedly Trump's going to bring him back to help with the Republican National Convention in, your fine state. And so the Washington Post says Trump may enlist Paul Manafort, who was criticized for Russia ties. well, what is this was criticized stuff?
Right.
I mean, he had Russian ties, and a Republican named Robert Mueller, who did the Mueller report, established that would beyond a shadow of a doubt. So when you say was criticized, what you're doing, I think, is you're turning it into some sort of partisan sniping. You're turning it into, you're making it well, this is these opinions. That's what they think, and that's what the other people think. You know, and the news media turning facts into opinions is dangerous, because then everything becomes an opinion. Everything becomes, well, this is how I feel. I don't care about the facts. And the fact that facts have been downgraded as an important thing in news media is, to me, a very alarming trend.
Yeah, here's another example that you put up from the New York Times talking about in Hungary, the prime minister there, Viktor Orban, keeps his grip at home by doling out cash, critics say. Critics say he's doing what he's doing.
And Pat, the whole article, this is the New York Times, and the whole article establishes with multiple examples that he's doing exactly that. The article doesn't say, well, we don't know if he is, critics said. The article establishes it, but the cowardly headline writers at the New York Times have to throw a critics say. And I just wonder whether there's some sort of automatic program in their computers where they just every time they try to say something that's bold and factual, someone's got to throw critics say at the end of it.
Well, or if you put something in quotes and you don't attribute it right away, then people think these words come from you, which you can see in this example. Alabama Republicans pass expansive legislation targeting DEI. The measure would not only cut funding to diversity programs at public colleges, but also limit the teaching of, quote unquote, divisive concepts surrounding race and gender, since when is teaching anti-racism a divisive concept? Why would you include that in quotes? Why?
Yeah, well, I think they're attempting to do it because that's part of the legislation, I guess. But they should. The thing about that is that gets me about that story is, all right, well, hold on here. You know, I mean, this is white people in Alabama making sure that we don't have divisive comments in our teaching. I mean, this is. I went back and I've done some research on Alabama and all this racist stuff there back in the 50s and 60s. The state actually spent money commissioning an out-of-state professor to come up with a study that showed that black people were inferior. I mean, this is like state money was spent on a kook deciding that with no evidence that black people were inferior. I mean, this is and that's that was in the 50s and I believe or the 60s and early 60s. But so this is not a state that doesn't have a history of, and for them to say, well, we're just making sure that nobody's racist anymore. I mean, give me a break. One of the best things about that story that I like is people saying, because if you know Alabama, you know that nothing's more important than sports and football, especially. Mm-hmm. And people saying, well, I'd say black athletes, if you're talented, don't go to Alabama. And if they had recruiting problems, that would be a crisis in Alabama.
Oh, sure. How is it not a bigger story that Donald Trump's former vice president won't endorse him? Because again, I try to turn the tables on this, and if something like that were the case with a Democratic former president running for office again, that would be monster news.
Yeah, and let me concede that it's not as important as it used to be. Maybe what's on the front page of the New York Times, but at the same time, that seems like huge news. It seems like what a repudiation. I mean, it and really unprecedented. That somebody would go to that lengths. And also, was it because he said it on Fox? I believe that's where he said it, or I have no idea what the thinking in the newsroom of the Times was. But generally, I guess these times are so weird for news gathering and for how you play stories, because there's always a new thing, Pat. I mean, it's like, the one crazy, outrageous thing happens, and then 6 hours later, another one. And so nothing sticks. Nothing has the kind of staying power that it might have had in a normal era.
I wonder as well. I talked about this story in the last hour, talking about how Hunter Biden is taking over the Democratic National Committee, and everybody donating to the Democratic Party is actually donating to Hunter Biden's lawyers. And then I remembered, no, that was a typo. This actually the Trump family that took over the Republican National Committee, and now there's this new arrangement where donations, intended for national Republicans up and down the ballot are getting siphoned in part to Trump's legal bills. And again, it seems like that's something more Americans ought to know about.
Well, right. I mean, that is kind of the last straw as far as the subversion of a formerly reputable political party, into kind of this subsidiary of the Trump organization. It's just kind of shocking in a way, or it would have been shocking in the old days. And now it's just, that's what the Republican Party is. It's been completely subsumed by Trumpism. And if I were like one of the down ballot candidates, if I'm running for a congressional seat, or if I'm whatever in the Republican Party, I would be very alarmed. I mean, this seems like, you're going to be like the spigot is going to be turned off, or it's going to be, the water's going in a different direction.
It's almost as if there's now this assumption that, well, there are billionaires out there, mega millionaires like the Eline family, they'll take care of the candidates. They'll take care of the congressional candidates. Derek Van Orden here is going to get all kinds of private money. The party money for all the little mom and pop small donors, that's the legal fund. That's not, we'll depend on these very, very wealthy people to fund these races when that used to be the role of the party. Right. And I don't even know the role of the party when you see this kind of an arrangement.
Well, and it certainly means that those candidates are more wholly owned by the super wealthy people who gave them all the money. Yeah. So that's an issue as well.
Yeah. Here's something that is refreshing, though, and we've talked about this a long time ago, and it's nice to see the change happening. And that is Republicans taking credit for money and jobs and projects coming into their state, into their district, when they voted against it. And this week's example was Marjorie Taylor Greene, trying to take credit in a newsletter Monday night. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but it was very much a, no, I really want to get this. Oh, yes. Greene's office says the Congresswoman, quote, meticulously sought out projects that would improve quality of life, increase economic and social development, assist localities with vital funding needs, and harness community support. That's a lie. And maybe news outlets weren't saying that's a lie, but at least they were picking that up and saying, no, she didn't vote for the bill. She was opposed to the bill. Now she's trying to take credit for it. That's a little bit refreshing to see that change.
Yeah. And people need to stay on that. That's another thing, is that I think that, that the Democrats have sometimes gotten bored with their best issues and stopped pounding on them. And in this case, it was last week, I think it was Elise Stefanik of New York, who one of the worst members of Congress and most dishonest, because she used to think she was a moderate, or pretend to be a moderate, and then she became a far right kind of election denier. And she had some big ballyhoo about some water project, and clearly she had voted against it because she votes against anything that Biden would come up with, and that needs to keep on happening. I mean, I wouldn't, if you want to turn it into once a week series, that people need to be reminded about how dishonest and really how useless the Republicans in Congress have been. I mean, they don't want to pass anything. They can barely, keep the government running, and they're fighting with each other today. They're undercutting the guy who's just barely by a thread holding onto the speakership, Mike Johnson.
Right. All right, Mark Jacob, thanks so much again. Have a great weekend.
Talk to you later.
Okay. Back with a little bit of sports talk after this. You're Up North.
From being close together.
No, it's not the Grateful Dead. It's George Benson one more time for turning 81 today. Special request by Greg Bach, who could not believe I didn't put this in the original music lineup for today.
I mean, it's so good. And
Is this what the kids call a banger?
It's what the kids call a banger, as the kids say. This song slaps.
That it slaps.
It's part of a playlist by a guy named The Real Yachtsman, and I'm like, I'm gonna find this list and I'm gonna download every.
The Real Yachtsman. So it's a
yeah.
lot of yacht rock.
Probably. Let's.
Oh, I'm in.
It's all George Benson too.
Oh my. Okay. Well, there you go.
There we go. All right. So yeah, love that song.
Okay, this sounds good. So Dan Schumacher normally joins us at this time, but as you could tell, people are dropping like flies around Wisconsin here. Sarah Godlewski was supposed to be on a few days back.
Yeah.
Sounded terrible. Dan sounded I sounded terrible a couple of weeks back. Greg, you didn't get any of this yet, did you? Stay in your bubble.
I'm
Stay
immune
in
from
your
all
bubble.
of your human diseases.
Oh, well, in that case, yeah, rock on. So we're going to do our best to cover a little bit of sports here, but we're going to start with the news story here first, because, and I talked about this with Chad Holmes on his show yesterday up on Bull Falls Radio in Wausau, this new controversy about baseball superstar Shohei Ohtani, who is caught up in a gambling controversy. He is not being accused of anything, but there's just kind of a weird appearance here because his interpreter has been fired after Ohtani's representatives accused him of stealing millions of dollars to place illegal bets. Yeah. So this now fired interpreter reportedly gave an interview to ESPN claiming that Ohtani had transferred millions of dollars from his account to him to cover the gambling debts. Ohtani's representatives said no, he had actually been the victim of theft. And there's no right answer. Well, I mean, somebody could say the right answer is to shut down all gambling, but when I say there's no right answer, I mean that would be a tough one to do. There's always been some form of gambling. The question is, has it gone too far where you have gambling sponsoring the sportscasts, you have ESPN Bet, you have, it's just gambling everywhere. And I mean, a story like this was inevitable, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, at what point do you just have to say, look, gambling is happening. Why isn't it just legal? It's sort of like the Delta 8 thing here in Wisconsin. It's like we have Delta 8 and Delta 9, which gets you high. Why don't we just have weed? Not to take the conversation in a different direction, but just sort of that thing of like, we have it. I can access it. Why is it still illegal? And I've been listening to some of these reporters, and they're very gingerly talking about this right now, because the one thing they're asking very lightly is Ohtani a part of this? Like, it's not just a theft thing, but is Ohtani betting as well? And
which would be crazy when you consider when he went to the Dodgers in the offseason, he signed a $700 million contract. He doesn't have to gamble. He won. He's getting all the house money from Chavez Ravine. He's getting $700 million. He doesn't have to gamble it.
Same thing with Michael Jordan, but that man is addicted to gambling.
Oh, yes. Yep. So I'm not saying that he shouldn't. Of course he might. Michael Jordan is the poster child for this, where they're making millions of dollars, but they will still go crazy to sink a putt because somebody's waving a $50 bill right there because it's cash money or whatever the case may be.
I just hope he's not a part of it, or I hope that nothing he's done is going to get him in trouble, because the guy is the bright light of baseball. He's
yes,
he's forgive the comparison. It's sort of like Taylor Swift in football, where like when you think of Ohtani, you're like, oh my God, I root for the Dodgers when they're playing teams I don't like. I'm like, of course I want Ohtani to crack 3 home runs and strike out everybody, and
Right.
and then save a child from a burning building.
he could probably do that, and we don't
Yeah.
need that kind of a was it Joe Jackson with the Black Sox scandal? We
Yeah.
don't need that kind of a fall from grace. People
Yeah.
look at Pete Rose, for example, and that is the big asterisk to all this,
Mhm.
where it's not quite like legalizing marijuana or something. Is players would throw games, or coaches would do something for a way to shave points, when really they should. You can't make this happen, but they should be the least aware of what the point spread is. They should just worry about winning or losing, not whether they win by so many points so they go for the touchdown instead of the field goal. And that would be the worst thing, is if you started to see something like that regularly, because they're going to get some kind of a kickback one way or the other from people gambling.
Yeah. I personally think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, but that's just me.
My view on it is admittedly very dark. But if I were the commissioner, I'd say, great achievements and everything. And someday you're going to go in the Hall of Fame, just not in your lifetime. You have a life sentence that you will not see yourself going to the Hall of Fame. Now, he could still take solace in the notion that, he's going to be in there someday. And I've seen Pete Rose live, and he's still as much of a jerk as ever. He's very bitter and very, very full of himself,
Yeah.
And I think he knows that that's going to be the case. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Watching him play when I was a kid was it was such a treat to watch. But you gambled on your own team, and there has to be some kind of an ultimate penalty for that.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, he was betting on his teams to win, so it wasn't the worst thing, which is betting on your team to lose and then not trying.
Yeah.
But still, the athletes, there's no reason for this. There just isn't. You're already there. Play the game.
Yep. But I feel like if Ty Cobb is in the Hall of Fame, put Pete Rose in the Hall. Ty Cobb was a nightmare of a human.
Yes, and who knows what all he might have done, in his lifetime. He didn't have TMZ and all the other salacious, paparazzi and gamblers at the time. So
yeah,
I don't know. All right. Well, if Dan were here, we'd also be reminding him that the NCAAs continue tonight. You've got Badger basketball, 8:45 tonight against James Madison, and you can hear that game. Coverage begins at 7:30 on locally grown radio in Wisconsin Rapids. News from the Center in Richland Center, Lake Erin Amory, WRJN in Racine, and Marquette plays at 1 o'clock this afternoon against Western Kentucky. Laughing Tap, real quick, your guest this week is again?
Casey Shornama. Tickets available at laughingtap.com. Come on down, no drink minimums. You can see me. I'm the guy at the front door every weekend.
You're the front door guy? Are you?
Yeah.
Do you have a velvet rope there or something?
Well,
there?
yeah. And when people are like, "Oh, you're the bouncer," I always say, "Yep." Or "You work here?" "Yeah." Or you take check IDs?" "Mm-hmm." I never tell them what my position is there.
Good. I like it. All right. Well, fun. I'll see you on Monday.
See ya.
And thanks for being part of our show today. Have a great weekend. Up North News is the Wisconsin digital outlet for Courier, a pro-democracy news network building a more informed, engaged, and representative America. See you Monday.